Hey guys, it's me, Johnny Crimps 2000 here. Welcome back to my Let's Play of Captain Commando. So we move from the aquarium onto this spaceship, kind of scientific-y, alien-looking place. I really don't know what this place is trying to go for. It's overly pink. Don't know why. The arrows on the floor really don't do much. They're just for decoration purposes. When I first played this game, the first time I went through this, I honestly thought that those arrows kind of... I don't know, I thought that they would serve some sort of purpose. Like, I thought it was like some sort of like conveyor belt, so like if you stood on the arrows that pointed to the right, that your character would be pushed to the right, and if you stood on the arrows pointing to the left, your character would be pushed to the left, kind of making like difficult to move or something like that. But alas, they are just there for decoration purposes and nothing else. And here you can kind of tell that the game is really picking up on the amount of enemies that they are throwing at you. It's insane how many they start throwing at you. Like the gates of the doors, or the doors keep opening up and just enemies just keep piling up. It's gonna get crazy in a little bit, especially when they all have guns and stuff like that. One thing I do want to touch up on that I forgot to mention in my last part is the differences between the Super NES version and the version I'm playing right here. Of course, as I mentioned at the beginning of my Let's Play, that I am playing the PS2 version from the Capcom Classics Collection Volume 2, which is basically the arcade version that's being emulated on the PlayStation 2. So this is pretty much as arcade perfect as you can get. Now, this game did get ported over to the Super NES, as I mentioned before, and just like pretty much every other arcade game that was ported over to home consoles at the time, some things had to be ditched. Because of the limitations of the Super NES, of course. And in the case of beat-em-ups, a lot of times big changes had to be made, not just with like graphical stuff like that, but with gameplay elements that, for better or worse, saw the game being limited, I guess. It took a lot of things out, and Captain Commando was no different. Besides the fact that the graphics, of course, had to be toned down, not by much. If you look at this game compared to the Super NES version, it did retain a lot of the colorful backgrounds, the colorful characters. I thought they did a good job as far as the graphics are concerned, but you could still tell that the Super NES took a slight hit when it came to the graphics department. But besides that, one of the biggest things that was taken out of the Super NES version is that it didn't allow for 4-player action. As you can see here, and what I'm trying to do with by showing me playing with 3 of my friends, is that the 4-player action pretty much makes this game a lot funner in the end, especially when it comes to multiplayer. So on the Super NES, although you did have the option of using a multi-tap for that console, I mean that's what you had to use when you wanted to play games like, say, Super Bomberman, which allowed for a 4-player multiplayer. With Captain Commando, you couldn't do that. You were kind of stuck with a 2-player game, which was all well and good because, you know, I mean, I don't remember seeing a lot of people, basically a lot of my friends didn't really have a multi-tap for the Super NES, so that wasn't a big deal even back then, because even if this game did allow for 4-player action, you were hard-pressed to find anybody that even had the ability to play 4-player games. But it was still, you know, beat-em-ups are supposed to be multiplayer, so it was kind of sad that that was taken out, but I could see why they had to do that. But nonetheless, you were allowed to play 2-player games, and they did retain all 4 characters, which was good. Although, unlike Final Fight, which, you know, the first version of Final Fight, they had to take out Guy to, you know, due to limitations, and that one we kind of missed out on the character that was fast yet weak. So it did kind of change the gameplay up a little bit. In this game, though, all 4 characters really, they all pretty much play the same, with slight, very, very slight differences in the way that they handle. So, I mean, it was okay, I guess, but it was a good touch that they kept all 4 characters. The other thing that they did take out, as you can see here, as you've been able to see all throughout my Let's Play, that you are given the option to use weapons, a bunch of weapons, as is common with a lot of beat-em-ups. In this game, though, there's a higher emphasis on like guns and stuff like that, rocket launchers. In the Super NES version, they're a lot less common than they are here. As you guys can see here, every time we run into like a group of bad guys, each one of them has a gun or something, and you beat them up, and they drop them, and then you can pick them up. In the Super NES version, that didn't happen as often, which is another, I guess, point that the Super NES version is not as action-packed as the arcade version is. I mean, the guns really are a big part of the fun, in my opinion. It's just so rewarding. It's so... I don't know. I have a good time shooting people. I mean, that's just me. And anyway, we beat this guy, Blood. He's pretty annoying. My friend Megan finally got the final hit, so it wasn't just me and my friend Corey doing all the work. But anyway, moving on, the last thing that was taken out of the Super NES version was the ride armor, which, as you guys can tell here, isn't that big of a part of this game, even in the arcade version, but it's still something that made it unique. I mean, you weren't seeing ride armor available in other games. You didn't see them in TMNT, you didn't see them in Final Fight, you didn't see them in Streets of Rage, so it was something that made Captain Commando unique, and it was kind of a shame that they took it out of the Super NES version, considering that that's the version that most people played, assuming that you actually knew somebody who owned this game. So now we're moving on to the spaceport. We're basically, you know, if you couldn't already tell, we're making our way up to outer space, as this is a outer space futuristic themed kind of game. And there we see the same enemies. This is pretty much a culmination of all the different enemies all at once. So without having nothing to talk about, I will start to mention Captain Commando's role, I guess, in later not Super NES, in later Capcom games, because this is pretty much the only game that he ever had the starring role of, which I thought was a shame. I would have liked to see this game have a sequel. But apart from this game, Captain Commando, of course, probably the most famous thing that he did after this game was that he did appear in the Marvel vs. series. He appeared in Marvel vs. Capcom and Marvel vs. Capcom 2 as a playable character, and in those games, during certain moves and I think certain supers, the rest of the Commando team showed up. So you got to see Gennady, you got to see Hoover, you got to see Sho in some of his moves, which was pretty nice considering that, you know, there's really nothing else that we can see them in. And it was nice to see, you know, an updated look for each one of them. In the first game, Marvel vs. Capcom, he's actually a playable character right away. In Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I do believe that you have to unlock him, which, I mean, it's not that hard to unlock in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. You just have to buy them from the shop. Aside from that, all four people from the Commando team did return in the Japan-only game Namco Cross Capcom. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And you also saw some of the enemies return as well, including this enemy right here, coming up here. This guy is so annoying. His name is Doppel. So as you guys can see, Doppel, it's kind of like a play on the word Doppelganger. If you don't know what that means, it basically means like a double or something like that, like a clone, if you will. And basically what he does, it's different every time you play. So if you're playing this game by yourself, Doppel will pretty much just copy whatever character you choose. So if you're playing this on one player mode by yourself and you reach him and you reach Doppel, he'll change into whatever character you are. So if you're playing as Captain Commando, he'll change into Captain Commando. If you're playing as Gennady, he'll change into Gennady. But the amount of clones that he turns into is dependent on how many players are playing at the time that you reach him. So basically, on one player mode, he'll change into your character only once, and you only have to fight one doppelganger of your character. If there are two players playing at the same time, they'll change into two, each doppelganger changing into the version of the characters that are being played. So here, basically, me and my friends are playing 4-player mode. Each one of us obviously is playing as a different character. So Doppel changed into 4 different clones, and each one is a clone of the character that we're playing as. So basically that means that me playing as Captain Commando, I have my own clone. Gennady has his own clone. Ginzu has his own clone, and then Hoover has his own clone. So it can get pretty crazy, and this one, if this were the arcade, this would seriously take up a lot of quarters, because it does get pretty hard. I mean, these guys have all of the moves that are available to you. They have the desperation moves, they have the special moves, they have the running moves. As you just saw there, I got caught on fire, which is not fun. I'm not a fan. But we beat him, and now we're moving on to Callisto, which is the last stage. And this one is pretty much I guess, where you face all the characters all over again, all the enemies. But anyway, moving on to, as I was saying before, Captain Commando and several characters also reappeared in the SNK vs. Capcom series, at least in the Card Fighter series. They didn't show up in SNK vs. Capcom Chaos or none of the Capcom release games for the PlayStation or the Dreamcast or the arcade, but they did make it to the Capcom Card Fighters Clash series, which if you don't know what those are, they're basically a series of games that were released for the Neo Geo Pocket and later for the Nintendo DS, which is basically like a card game. I kind of liken it to the Pokemon trading card game or the Yu-Gi-Oh games, where it's a video game that you play, except it's like, you know, instead of using like, for example, Pokemon uses monsters, you use cards to fight other opponents and stuff like that. It's basically an RPG, and it has a crap ton of cameos from both the Capcom characters and the SNK characters. So if you're a fan of either one, I would highly suggest you get that game. And finally, Captain Commando showed up for another game called Capcom World, which honestly I don't know that much about it, so I really can't talk about it too much. It's basically, from what I remember, it's basically just a quiz, one of those quiz games that ask you a bunch of questions, and Captain Commando, I guess, shows up in one of the questions or something like that. I honestly can't tell you. And finally, Captain Commando and Ginzu appeared in a cameo as part of Ken's background stage in Street Fighter Alpha 2. We'll be getting to that a bit later as part of my Street Fighter retrospective that I'm currently on the process of recording. So hopefully I'll get that out soon. But in Street Fighter Alpha 2, in Ken's stage, the premise basically of the stage is that you're celebrating, or Ken, I guess, is celebrating Elisa's birthday. If you don't know who Elisa is Ken's girlfriend slash wife, depending on which game you're playing. And it's her birthday, so they're on a yacht because, you know, Ken is rich, I guess. And in the background, you see a bunch of cameos from a bunch of different, like, Capcom characters. Whether they're supposed to be real, I don't know. I kind of just think that they're, like, it's a costume party. And one of them is Captain Commando and Ginzu. And aside from that, that's pretty much the only things that Captain Commando has been in. He didn't appear in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which honestly I was very upset. First, they didn't show Strider. Of course, you know, he later became a downloadable character. Then they don't have Captain Commando, and then they don't have Jin. So you could see that I was kind of upset that those characters didn't show up. But whatever. Maybe he'll appear as a downloadable character, although I highly doubt it at this point. Anyway, back to the game. This is Scumicide. Scumicide is the main villain of this game, and good God, Manthong came out of nowhere. I don't know what he's supposed to be. I think he's supposed to be just like some super villain. He doesn't appear to be human, but he doesn't appear to be too alien-ish. But he's basically the main villain. He flies around, so it makes it very difficult to attack him. You can't really put him into a combination. You can only like give him like 2 or like maybe around 2 hits before he just flies off. So as you can tell, he's pretty hard to hit. He also flies off the boundaries of the stage, as you just saw there. So you can only walk on the floor. You can't really jump on top of the monitors or anything like that. So once he flies off, you can't really reach him. He has a bunch of projectiles, including this one where he like summons like a bunch of meteorites or something, like causing explosions. This one right here. And basically it's kind of random where he is. It's basically just luck if you get hit or not. He also has these 2 different projectiles that will cause either fire or ice. And obviously if you get the fire one, you catch on fire, which stuns you for a little while. If you get ice, you'll be frozen, which will render you immobile for a little while. Overall, he's honestly not that hard to beat. It just takes a lot. I mean, obviously I'm saying he's not that hard, but we have infinite continues. And my God, my friend Mandy finally got a win as Ginzu, which we were all freaking out about, because this is like the last stage and she hadn't gotten a win at all. And hooray, we finally beat Scumicide. And you guys can pause these. I can't read them because they'll come up really, really freaking fast. But basically it's saying that the super criminals have been eradicated, and it's all because of Captain Commando. They stopped the world from taking, or they stopped them from taking over the world, and now the planet is at peace.
Captain Commando.
And I love how like they ask him who he is, and he just says, "I am Captain Commando," using the same voice clip that we've been hearing all over, you know, again and again, all throughout the game. Pretty lazy, Capcom, I must say. But anyway, one last bit of trivia before I finish this off. Scumicide is actually known as genocide in Japan. As you can tell, that kind of didn't go very well, I guess, with the translator, so they kind of just changed it with Scumicide, which, you know, quite frankly, I don't think is as threatening. I mean, whose name is Scumicide? But anyway, guys, that was it. That was Captain Commando, and now we're all jumping for joy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Before I sign off for this LP, we get to see us put our glorious names. And for this session, my friend Corey, who is playing as Genity, actually beat me. I think I beat him last time, as you guys will see on the score screen. And poor Mandy. My friend Mandy got placed as 25th, which we were kind of giving her a hard time with. As you can see, my friend Corey got 3rd place. I got 4th place, and my friend Megan got 5th place, and as you guys can see, I'm first at the top, and my friend Corey's at the 2nd. And Mandy, she got 25th. The screen had to scroll all the way down just to see where she is, but we love her anyway. So anyway, guys, that was it. That was Captain Commando. I hope you guys enjoyed this Let's Play. Wanted to do something a little different. Honestly, I really love this game. I love beat-em-ups, and I love the setting. I think it's very different. If you have the chance, go check it out. Play. I suggest you get the version from Capcom Classics Collection. It's really worth it. Anyway, guys, this has been Johnny Crimson 2000, and I will see you in my next Let's Play.